Good morning, good afternoon, actually, it's now afternoon. Welcome everybody to the 5th session of Etown Links. This is a series of webinars carefully curated to give you only the best, most relevant information on running a business in the light of the immense change and upheaval due to COVID-19 in our community. Through this partnership with Elizabethtown College and Elizabethtown Area Chamber of Commerce, we invite local experts to give you what you need to know in an hour or less. There's so much information out there. We want to try to compact it down for you to just give you the best parts of it. Today's topic is mental health in the workplace and beyond, since as we all know, the workplace has extended to pretty much everywhere at this point in time. I'm Kelly Fuddy, the former membership manager at the Chamber, and I've come back in this time of world crisis to co-moderate Etown Links with my co-host, Dr. Matthew Fritz, who I will allow to introduce himself.
Hi, good afternoon, Etown and surrounding areas. This is Matt Fritz from Elizabethtown College. I direct the choirs at the college and teach all sorts of other fun stuff here. But I'm here to kind of co-host and read through any questions that might be posed during the webinar today. So please use the link at the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A and provide us with any questions that you might have as the panelists go along in their presentation, and we'll interrupt them as we see relevant questions to what they're discussing to be helpful, and otherwise we'll wait till they're finished their presentation before we pose the questions.
Your sound went out.
Thanks so much, Matt. Hit the wrong button. Just an update from the Chamber. I'm also providing interim support here right now, and I want to remind you to follow our social media for the latest updates from Recovery Lancaster, where you can find applications that are now open just this week for the first round of grant funding from Lancaster County's CARES Act funds. These are grants of up to $35,000 for businesses with 20 or fewer employees, and more information about the eligibility requirements for the next 2 rounds will be available soon. The first 10 million is in this round. The portal to apply is open now through Friday at 7 p.m. It's not a first come, first serve. There's an FAQs on there that tells you what documents you'll need before you sit down. I promise you it's a lot easier than unemployment or the government websites. It's very well organized. You can also still apply quickly and easily for your free PPE kit. If you look on our Chamber Facebook and the Discover Elizabethtown page, you'll see an unboxing that I shared from Northern Lancaster County Chamber of Commerce. They showed you what's inside those packages, and that's for businesses with 100 or fewer employees. And again, completely free. More details are in our emails that we're sending you. You can subscribe to our email newsletter via our website to get all the latest information. So a few more things about today's session. This is a public open event. It will be recorded and later published to the Chamber YouTube channel. Each presenter is going to give some short presentation information they prepared, and followed by time for Q&A. At the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button, normally where you'd see a chat button, where you can communicate your questions for our presenters, and Matt and I will field them at the right timing. You can submit them at any time during the presentation, and we'll ask on your behalf. Also, just so you know, we can't see you, so listen in. Don't worry about being on camera if you ask a question. No one will know that it was you. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's panelists. First, we have Bruce Lynch. Bruce is a licensed psychologist.
My sound has gone out. I can't hear you.
Bruce is a licensed psychologist. He's worked as the director of counseling services and student health at Elizabethtown College since moving to the area with his wife and his son in January 2014. Bruce earned his PhD from the Counseling Psychology program at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and then he worked at Old Dominion's University's Counseling Center, and also at the Counseling and Testing Center at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro, where he served as a director for several years and was also an assistant director, training coordinator, and senior staff psychologist. Bruce is a general therapist who assists college students with a wide variety of mental health, situational, and developmental concerns. Our second panelist is Rhonda Myers. She's a licensed professional counselor in private practice in Elizabethtown. She has nearly 20 years of experience working in college, inpatient mental health, and outpatient counseling settings. She works with a wide range of concerns, including depression and other mood disorders, anxiety, grief, life transitions, and has a specialization in relationship counseling. Her practice focuses on relationships of all kinds: intimate, family, workplace, and the relationship to self. So Bruce is working a little bit on some audio connections. So I'm going to let Rhonda get started with that for us with some common stressors, and hopefully he'll be able to jump in when he's ready. So thank you so much, Rhonda, for being here.
Thank you for having me today. And I hope Bruce can jump in as soon as he's able to join. But we wanted to start just by acknowledging how stressful the time that we're in it is. We've been having months of needing to adapt to changing conditions and uncertainty and not knowing what's going to come next, not knowing how long this will last. And so the uncertainty and lack of information sometimes, lack of clear direction, creates anxiety for all of us. So I just would done to just review a little bit of like what kind of things people are struggling with. First, economic security. Do I have a job to come back to? How long will I have it? Some people have lost their jobs. Certainly the concern about health, our health conditions. Will we catch it ourselves? Will loved ones catch it? We've experienced losses of all sorts. Sometimes people that we've loved, jobs, activities, things we've enjoyed. So we have losses on multiple levels and worrying about the future. And the other thing we've had to deal with too is for the people who have been able to work or maybe were transitioning to working at home is often dealing with other family members in the house at the same time. And how do I take care of my kids, or how do I oversee homeschooling? How do I coordinate all these Zoom meetings that are going on, sometimes multiple ones in the house at the same time? So lots of stresses. And then as we think about coming back to the workplace, for people who are coming back to work or have been at work all this time physically in a location, just all the stress that goes with that. Many workers have an underlying health condition, or they are immunocompromised in some way and are really concerned about, are they going to be exposed to something, or are they going to bring something home to a family member who might be susceptible. They have to worry about adapting to changing work practices and changing procedures at work. They have to worry about dealing with maybe coworkers or customers or clients who aren't complying with the guidelines. They might be feeling unsupported by management in dealing with the safety concerns. And then I think also of business owners and managers who are concerned about creating and maintaining a safe environment, maybe worried about some liability concerns. And then lastly, and this is why we're here today, is just dealing with our own emotional reactivity. Like, this is tough and we are all stressed and we're meeting with other people who are stressed. And so just learning how to manage ourselves to be more effective and to maybe feel a little less stressed. Hopefully we're going to be talking about some of that today.
Thanks, Rhonda. The audience for this webinar today covers the gamut of people who are employees, people who are laid off, people who are going back to work and facing some of those fears, of contagion or being immunocompromised, all those things. And there's also employers, people who employ others and have to think about new things. One topic that came up last week in our webinar was this, liability for workers' compensation, if one of your workers might get sick. So let's maybe start while we're waiting for Bruce to talk about what can employers who are, asking their employees now to come back to work. We're in the yellow, we might be moving to the green, but some people might not feel safe. Employees, what can employers do to help them from a mental health perspective?
Yeah, I think maybe first of all, I can just talk a little bit about what to look for in your employees or coworkers. And so I think looking for changes in people, like a change from how they normally present, right? So maybe a change in their demeanor. Are they more irritable? Are they less flexible, more resistant to changes? Are they appearing nervous or anxious or worried or restless? And then looking at changes in their actual physical appearance, like has there been a decline maybe in their grooming or their personal appearance? Are they looking fatigued and worn and stressed? Looking for changes in performance. Are they less productive? Are they making more mistakes? Are they taking longer to finish things? Are they unfocused or distracted? Having trouble staying organized? Looking for changes in behavior. Are they missing work more often, coming in late more frequently, reacting negatively to changes? Are they having emotional outbursts that they wouldn't be typically having? And then looking at relationships with coworkers and staff. Are you seeing more aggressiveness, more hostility, increased conflict? And maybe the other side of that, and just being more withdrawn and less participative. So I think really what you're looking for is a change from what you normally see from that person. And then with regard about, you asked about how to respond. I think working from the business owner or manager's perspective, as changes are happening, to really work at providing clear communication to people, make it easy for them to find information. You know, we have got so much information coming at us and so many emails and so many updates that things can get like lost in the fray. And so really making those changes easy to find, posted where they can see them, will help to create or to help get rid of that uncertainty and doubt. And along with that, to try to develop as consistent routines as you're able to do. And I know these are constantly changing times and constantly changing guidelines, but as much as we're able to create a consistent routine that helps to calm down our stress if we know what to expect. I think normalizing that, you know, these are tough times and it's normal to feel anxiety. It's normal to feel some impatience with all of this and this desire to get back to normal. Those are all very normal and common things to be feeling, and they're not alone in feeling like this. I think asking for feedback from your employees, you know, what can we do to help you make this easier? What can we do to help people transition and accept changes that we didn't want to have to make in the first place, right? How can we make this a little bit easier to manage? And then I think providing resources to how to find support. You know, if you do you have an employee assistance program? Remind your clients or remind your employees about that. Remind them that they can use their health insurance to find counseling or to access community resources that are available.
Those are really important points, Rhonda, especially about, you know, checking in with them probably more often, being really approachable about it. You know, because I know, especially it can differ generation to generation too, how comfortable people feel going to their boss and letting them know they're having a hard time and what that might mean for their employment in a fragile economic environment. So thank you for those tips. Bruce, looks like you have been able to connect with us. We started out by talking about, you know, the employee-employer situation with all these increased mental health needs. Do you have anything else to share with us?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm glad I could finally get everything connected as some unexpected things came up. Yeah, I really liked what Rhonda said. I think another piece that would be helpful to keep in mind is, you know, in addition to the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're also in a time where there's a lot more discussion happening across the country about, you know, anti-racism, diversity, and I think being mindful of what, you know, spoken or unspoken messages you give to your employees regarding your, you know, values and openness in support of diversity topics is another way to help you stay connected with your employees and to help them, you know, feel confidence and trust in you. And even if it's not a topic that, you know, in your work setting you're going to be talking with employees, I think it's important for employees to know that you're, you know, an affirming, safe person to talk to.
That's a really important point. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Rhonda, but you're right. There's not just one large crisis and confrontation going on right now. There's a lot of conversations happening, and there's a lot of us, frankly, that have more time to have these conversations because some people aren't working as much. So any further thoughts you have on that piece of things, on how to create a safe environment for, you know, these conversations that are coming up about racism systemically in our society and obviously in the workplace too?
Well, I think maybe considering, can you do some workplace training? I mean, I think we all need some, we all can benefit from learning more about the conditions that other people live with and what their life is like. That we have a tendency to assume, right, that like we see the world through our own lens and we kind of assume that that's how life is for other people. That is not how life is for other people. And opening up pathways for discussions about that, that we can hear other people's experiences and stories and learn that when I know more about you, when I know more about your experience, that really goes a long way in helping us bridge our differences. And I think, I mean, to speak about what's going on in our culture, we just have a tendency to associate with people who look like us, think like us, agree with us. And we've seen so much of like, you know, unfriending. I'm just going to unfriend people who don't agree with me, people who say things that I don't like. And the more disconnected we get from people who we disagree with, the easier it is to dehumanize them. And when we dehumanize people, really dangerous things start to happen. So I think creating a workplace that we can have some conversations, even though they might be difficult. I mean, certainly there are facilitators that can come in and help you have those conversations. You don't have to be the expert yourself.
Great, thank you. And we're going to be sharing at the end. Rhonda and Bruce have already provided us some great links for the internet, so we'll share those in the event, kind of like show notes. And if you have any more that are explicit to that topic, please feel free to share them with us, and we'll share with all our participants in the coming days. Any other thoughts that you guys would like to share about how this particularly is affecting the workplace for employers and employees? I know we had also talked in planning about, you know, the extra hours and the childcare and the financial losses and changes and how all that's affecting people. In your experience with counseling during this time, what is coming up for people, and how are you encouraging them that they'll get through it?
Well, would this be a good time to bring in the handout about maintaining mental health during the COVID-19 break?
Sure. Brian's going to try to get that up for us.
Okay. And while he's working on doing that, I mean, some of the challenges, and you may have, oh, here we go. Yeah. So
you may be sharing it in two parts, Bruce, because so that people who are looking on a smaller screen can see it. So. Oh,
that's a good point. Yeah. So this is a handout that came out, you know, when most people were working from home, but I think still applies as people are transitioning back to being in the workplace. You know, being mindful, certainly it's important to be informed about what's going on in the world, and understandable that we want to be encourage people to be mindful about, you know, when you know, it's time to take a break from the news, move on to some other activities, whether you notice that you find your worries escalating or just experiencing more anxiety as a sign, or you just kind of do some planning ahead of time. Okay, I'm going to watch 20 minutes of news now to be connected, or check out a podcast, and then I'm going to move on to something else. It's about staying connected. Certainly this applied when people are working from home, and ways to be able to be socially distancing, but also communicating with people that are important to you for support. And as you're returning to work, you may have a combination of people that are working in person and people that are still working remotely. So putting some time into, you know, staying in communication to feel that sense of connection, even if you're not under the same roof. The routine can be challenging regarding the, you know, maintaining boundaries between work and your personal life, and maintaining some balance, and developing a routine that works for you, where you're meeting your supervisor's expectations as far as your workload and your tasks, but you also have time planned in for some self-care and some breaks and some activities to help you stay rejuvenated. You may have talked about this before I got on, but one of the pressures that come with people returning to work, you know, with businesses now gearing up again, and your business may have taken a financial hit from being closed or less busy. So there's a balance of, okay, we really got to work hard now to catch up and be sure that my job is secure. And I know there's a reality to that. But it's important to continue to pay attention to, okay, what can I do to still be maintaining a routine, taking care of myself, even if I'm stepping up the number of hours that I'm working. And there's a couple things on the bottom half of this page. This is part of what I heard Rhonda talking about, acknowledging that this has been a very stressful time. It continues to be, to notice you're feeling frightened or sad or scared. And, being aware of that can help you decide, okay, what do I need to do now to take care of myself? Maintain some support that will enable me to still be working hard in my job, but also taking care of myself. The gratitude part, and different people approach this in different ways. It doesn't mean pretending that everything's fine, but looking for opportunities to notice things that you genuinely appreciate. Whether it is certain people in your life that you really value, whether it's certain activities that you appreciate. Okay, now that some of the restrictions are starting to lift, I can do something that means something to me. I got out and played golf on Monday. That's something that means something to me, and it was a safe environment, and I appreciate being able to do that. So, and it can be, even within this stressful time, maybe some things that you learned or were able to do during the quarantine that you appreciated. Maybe you got some more time to spend with your kids, and that had some unexpected benefits to it. And I think a key with a lot of these are, you're going to be the expert in what type of activities help you feel rejuvenated. When it talks about creative expression, things that you find some meaning to, and giving yourself permission to notice that and take some time for that. Rhonda, you may have some things to add, but those are some things that I've seen people find helpful when they've worked on this in counseling.
Yeah, I would just along with what you were saying, just affirm, like you said about like losing our boundaries, that's happened for most of us, right? That if we're working from home, we've lost that boundary between work and home. And so being able to devise as much as you're able to a separate workspace, even sometimes that's not possible, but trying to confine your work to your workspace so that you create a better boundary. And then that applies with your mental habits too, right? To be able to try to click off as much as possible from work, and to try to keep that separation there between work and home. And that's really tough when we're actually working from home and we're all at home all the time. So that can be challenging. I think another coping strategy is to work on focusing on the things that you can control. We get really tied up in what we can't control, and we it's kind of wasted energy and wasted time, and builds our frustration. So it's like the serenity prayer, change the things you can and learn to accept the things we can't. And I just want to say that accepting, sometimes really people struggle with that word, but accepting doesn't mean that I like it or that it's okay or that I agree with it. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that I stop resisting what I can't change. And so to redirect my focus and attention and to put my energy towards something that I can do can be really helpful.
That's really helpful, Rhonda. I always say if I get a tattoo, that's what it's going to be, that prayer. But they, and it fits really well with what Bruce was saying about thinking about, what are the unexpected benefits? What can I control? What can I control? Sometimes even just drawing a circle on a piece of paper, putting inside the circle the things you can control, right, and outside the things you can't. And thinking about those unexpected benefits that came, not to lessen the suffering of anyone's experience. Some people can't work from home. Some people
Right.
are having to go out and they don't have childcare, and there's some really tough situations. But I know for me, like, there were definitely right off the bat some unexpected benefits. Like, my kids are between 6 and 12. That is a great time period to get to spend more time with your kids before they grow up. And I know a lot of friends felt the same way. If I had babies or all teenagers, I might feel a lot differently about that. So that's one thing. And you mentioned just all the roles. I know for me, like in the past, a strategy for creating boundaries and being able to balance all my roles was, they had all these different hats, but I wore them in different places at different times. And now I'm trying to wear them all in the same place simultaneously. I'm teaching my kids, parenting my kids, doing multiple of my jobs from the same place, back and forth, back and forth. So new ways to create boundaries had to arise. But human beings are resilient things. So
Yes.
yeah. Matt has a question. I'm going to let him jump in here.
Hey, thank you so much. Apologize. Pushing the wrong button here. So, Rhonda, I think just before we went live, I think you had alluded to a discussion about the challenge of working the technology and Zoom and all that, but the challenges of doing telecounseling. And I was wondering if either of you could share with some of our viewers what does that look like? What kind of equipment should people invest in to do that kind of stuff? How do you go about doing that as a person who might be seeking out some professional assistance?
Well, I think it's become much easier to do telecounseling, telehealth, video sessions. You can even do it from your phone, as long as your phone has a camera and a microphone, and many people do that. Some people were quick to adapt and jumped right into doing remote counseling, and love it. For some people, it's much more convenient. They don't have to get a babysitter. They don't spend extra time in the commute to and from the counseling office. Some people are able to do counseling on their lunch break or their dinner break, and they go out to their car from their workplace. So for some people, it has been an immense convenience, and they want to keep doing it. And for others, there's just nothing like meeting in person. And so for some people, they stopped and just said, we'll just wait this out. But the longer that it's gone on, that's gotten harder to do. But I would say, as far as I would want to reassure people that we use platforms that are HIPAA compliant. They have high levels of security, and sometimes the challenge is finding a quiet, private space to do that. But the technology itself is secure, and it's easy to use. For myself, I just send the person a link. They don't have to download anything. They don't have to have any special equipment. You just click the link at the time of the appointment, and here we are having our discussion. I will say too that for people who want to meet in person, every therapist has handled that differently. Some are doing exclusively remote counseling, and that's all they feel able to do and willing to do right now. Some people are doing it very selectively, just where it feels like it's really needed to be in person. And as our, at least in Pennsylvania, as our levels of color, right, we're in red to yellow to green, open up, some of us are meeting a little bit more, starting to offer in person a little bit more frequently. So with protections, like either with a mask or a face shield, and doing all this, just all the safety precautions that you would have in any other kind of office. How about you, Bruce? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. As we transitioned to providing telehealth, for some people, it's been a little challenge finding a private place within their home with their family members there. But then some people have chosen to use the telephone rather than the computer to get out to their car, and that transition has gone really well. I think probably when we started doing telehealth, I was thinking well, are both the counselor and client going to pick up on some of the subtle, cues about what's going on with each person through the video? I mean, maybe it's been a challenge at times, but I think in some ways it's enhanced the sense of therapeutic alliance because it's a different type of professional intimacy, communicating by telehealth, and for some people that's helped them feel even more comfortable talking about important topics. And we always have a telehealth consent form that people sign so they understand some of the things, if the technology glitches, we just both log back in and resume, and that type of, just being human flexibility has helped. So it's been, it's gone well. And as we're looking at fall semester, we're planning a combination of some in-person sessions and some Zoom sessions, even as people come back to campus, and phone and Zoom, because some students prefer a telephone call rather than a video session.
Thanks, Bruce. Can you guys see me? I agree that it's been some surprising benefits to doing things online too. There's been, I do telehealth at my other work, and I at first, when we used to do this about a year ago, before any of this happened, it seemed like really scary because I had the same fears as you, that you wouldn't be able to read people's body language, you wouldn't know who else is in the room, being able to read those subtle cues. But now the irony is, when I see people in person, it has to be behind a mask. When I see them on Zoom,
Yeah.
I can at least actually see their facial expressions. And one other tip I would have on that you guys have probably found too, is that people worry about their technology, but if you have a smartphone, it's a better camera than your laptop probably anyway. They have the best cameras, and it's actually easier to make eye contact on a smaller screen. Well, you're not really making eye contact for it to feel like that. When you're on a desktop, sometimes it'll often look like you're looking down when you're looking at the person. But with an iPad or a phone, it's a lot easier to look straight at the camera and still be able to see the other person's eyes. So
Yeah.
There's a lot of fears, but there's a lot of good things. You brought those out.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys want to talk a little bit more then about resiliency and how we can cope. So why don't you take that away for a little bit?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And Brian, if you could pull up the handout about the definition of resilience and growth mindset, if you have that one. If not, I can pull it up on my screen.
We'll give him a second to work on it.
Okay, yeah. So when we're talking about resilience, and this is something I think most people get, but occasionally somebody misunderstands it. When we're talking about resilience, we're not talking about, oh, just buck up and tough it out. It's not that type of message. Because we know these situations now with COVID-19 in the world are extremely stressful. So the financial impact of the quarantining. So we're talking about, that balance of acknowledging that the situation is really stressful, but also developing some perspectives and actions that can help with, continuing on the path of what's important towards you. So under the constructs, the definition, which I think gets at some of that, and Angela Duckworth describes resilience or grit as perseverance and passion for long-term goals that entail working strenuously toward challenges and maintaining effort and interest despite adversity and plateaus. So that's, having, whether it's for your business, you have a long-term goal in mind, and certainly you may have been temporarily set back financially or with your staff. And, acknowledging that it's difficult, but also keeping in mind, okay, this is what we're working toward. And by keeping this in mind and also normalizing, and it may sound odd to say that with such an unusual world situation we're going through with COVID-19, but normalizing that, setbacks, disappointments, adversity happen, even on the path of people that are extremely successful, can help with the persevering. And I think the growth mindset gets at some of that. People probably know the story of the tortoise and the hare. You know, the hare is the big favorite, the speedy rabbit that gets off to a huge lead and thinks that, well, I'm the best, no problems here. The tortoise perseveres. Some things happen, the tortoise ends up winning. So trying to focus on, okay, my measure of how I'm doing personally or my business, you know, being successful is, you know, I can go on my own time frame. When I have to deal with something that's challenging and I learn it and maybe have some, you know, failures, but then I learn it and I succeed. You know, that's, I would argue, a stronger measure of success than someone that succeeded, you know, pretty easily. And being able to view that, and I know, you know, with financial realities, this doesn't mean you always have a lot of time, but trying to view it as, okay, there's some opportunity for me to gradually build up my business to get to where I need to be, to gradually learn the skills that I need to be, you know, an effective supervisor under these conditions, to learn more about how to be affirming of diversity. And that, you know, that's a normal part of learning. And also that, you know, everyone has the potential to learn. It's not just, okay, some people are smart and then they're going to be successful, or some people are born with this talent and they're the only people that are successful. You know, a lot of people are very successful after having gone through challenging times. And related to that, yeah, acknowledging that a disappointment, a failure, a loss is really painful. But, you know, without being trite, it really doesn't have to define us. You know, there's opportunity to make use of support and resources and learning to keep going. So those are some points. I don't know if there are more questions come in or things that you want to add, Rhonda, but those are some of the things I think about regarding resilience.
Rhonda, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I just would just affirm what Bruce said, that resilience doesn't mean we don't encounter obstacles or setbacks, or that we don't feel the effect of those obstacles and setbacks, but that we learn how to persevere and try again, and to really that we can move into, if it's helpful, to move into some ways to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking when he was saying about, you know, learning from your failures and being able to, you know, experience that and realize you're still learning and growing. I would think for employers, that's a great way, or really the best way to help your employees would be to model that yourself. When you have that kind of compassion for yourself and understanding, it models that it's okay for them without you having to say it explicitly.
Right.
Excellent point.
I wonder if I could.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to jump in. I'm just wondering, it seems so often in mental health we tend to be reactionary to negative situations, and clearly this time in history is a really, really challenging moment for everyone. But I'm wondering if you could speak to the value of pursuing counseling for those maybe who feel they're navigating this pretty well, but can recognize that there are some areas that they could continue to grow in at this moment.
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about two specific practices that that benefit anybody. You don't have to be struggling to benefit from these two practices. The first one is mindfulness practice. And you probably have heard a lot about mindfulness in recent years. It's become very popular and more mainstream in recent years. But for people who don't know what it is, I'll just say briefly, it is learning how to be present in this moment, which that sounds very simple. And the idea is very simple. It's just hard to do. You know, we are more often in the past, kind of, you know, ruminating about things that have happened, or beating ourselves up about something that didn't go well, or wondering why somebody treated us that way. Or we are out in the future, either positively or negatively. Positively maybe anticipating things coming up, or negatively worrying about what bad things could happen. And all of that mental activity is taking us away from this current moment. So mindfulness practice is learning how to notice when I have wandered away into the past or future or some other distraction, and to come back to this moment. And one of the primary concepts of mindfulness practice is to notice without judgment. We judge all the time, right? We judge whether, I like this yogurt or not, or whether the room is too hot or cold, or right? And judgment has a purpose. We couldn't make decisions without making judgments. But there's lots of times we're judging and it's just not helpful and it's actually harmful. And so when you are working on a mindfulness practice, you'll start to notice your judgmental thoughts. And the reason that they say don't judge your judging, right, in mindfulness practice is because judging takes us into its own little spiral, its own little rabbit hole. So when you notice, oh, that's a terrible thought. What kind of person thinks that thing? What's wrong with me? Oh, that's judging, or just label it not helpful, not necessary, and just come back to the thing that you're trying to focus on. And the reasons to practice mindfulness is just that very thing I just said, is to learn to be present. It's not necessarily designed to make us feel better, although often when we are just in this moment, we do start to feel better. We're more relaxed, we're less stressed, and we are here for the moment. We know that it has positive impacts on our health. It helps reduce anxiety and depression. It can lower blood pressure. It improves our concentration, and it can strengthen our immune system. And so there's lots of good benefits from doing mindfulness practice. And it's not, it's not a medication. It doesn't have any side effects. And so, there's really no reason not to try it. And the point to your question is, what can we do to manage ourselves better? Mindfulness is the first step in that, because mindfulness practice develops my observing self, right? The part of me that notices, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I reacting to? And I cannot get a hold of my behavior, right, if I'm not aware of those things. So mindfulness practice is like the building block to becoming more effective in dealing with myself and in dealing with other people. And then the second concept, and I can say more about mindfulness if people have questions, or if Bruce wants to chime in on that. But I'll go to wise mind, and then if anybody has any questions, we can talk then about that. So if I could get that slide for the wise mind graphic. Wise mind is just understanding kind of what's going on inside of our brain at any given time. And so I'll just explain it till we see the picture. Oh, here it comes. So there's the graphic, and you can see one circle represents our rational and logical mind. It's the place where we do all our planning, goal setting, think about consequences, costs and benefits. It's the very kind of rational, logical part of us. And then we have our emotional mind, right? And that is just everything that I'm feeling in this moment. And the integration of that, right? The conscious integration of my rationality and logic with emotions, the intelligence of my emotions, right, brings us to wise mind. And just a real quick example, say you have an exercise goal, right? You set yourself a goal. I'm going to exercise 4 times a week, and I have all my reasons why I'm going to do that. I'm going to reach my fitness goal. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to like how I look and how I feel. So I have all my reasons why I want that. And then my emotions show up, right? I'm going to go work out after work. Well, I turn off my computer, or I get home from work and I'm tired and I don't want to exercise, and it's hot outside and I don't feel like it. And I'd rather pour myself a glass of wine and watch some Netflix, right? So that's my emotion mind. It's not wrong or bad. It's just how I feel in this moment. And often, because our emotions are present, they're here right now, often we go with what our emotions are telling us. And if we don't slow down and stop and think about, well, what else is true? Yes, I feel tired. Yes, I don't feel like it. But what else is true? Well, I also want to be more fit, and I want to be healthier, and I want to like how I feel. That's also true, right? And bringing those two sides of the equation together, bringing them both to the table, helps me make a wise mind decision. But that requires an awareness of what's going on within me. And that's why I really feel like mindfulness practice is a foundation or a building block to begin to work with ourselves more effectively. And then that helps us in our relationships with other people, right? I'm better able to catch myself feeling defensive or feeling reactive or not slowing down and thinking about how is this going to land on the other person? What's the best way to say this? So it takes lots of practice. It's not easy to do. Our reactivity is wired into us for survival. So we are working against thousands of years of survival strategies. And so it's not a bad thing, but it's something that we need to catch and harness and manage. Bruce, I know you might have some things to add to that.
Well, yeah, that was very well described. Yeah, and I think mindfulness can be very powerful, for people that are under more stress and are noticing concerns, but also, back to Matt's question, people who may, feel they're doing okay, but they really want to enhance their quality of life or build up some the self-care and awareness skills that Rhonda was describing in anticipation of, stressful things they may experience in the future. And that's something people can learn in collaboration with talking to a counselor. And there's also opportunities to study and learn mindfulness, even if someone's not working with an individual counselor. And I think it's an important component of an even broader category of self-compassion, ways to be able to be appreciating ourselves and noticing anxiety that may be coming up related to overly self-critical thoughts, and ways to be able to build up skills to be nicer and more realistic in a nicer way with ourselves. Both it helps relationships, but also helps when so many people in the country and the world are going through a stressful time right now. So yeah, it's well described about mindfulness.
Agreed. I also, in your diagram, Rhonda, I was thinking about some of us that are hard driving type A personalities, maybe the type of people who would become an entrepreneur or, be the boss at their business. I sometimes get caught the opposite way from what you were describing, where I forget that I'm an emotional being and I'm stuck on that rational, logical side thinking, well, I feel overwhelmed, but I shouldn't. I should be able to do all this. I've done it all before. And, need to stop and recognize that I'm also an emotional being. So my capacity today might not be the capacity on a normal day or the capacity I had last week because I'm not always in the same space every day in terms of what's going on with my emotions.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think our culture has kind of privileged, production and getting things done and being rational and logical. But maybe we need to remember that we have our emotions for a reason. They are wired into us and they are a form of intelligence and they have a function. And if we are ignoring them, we are ignoring a lot of information that was designed to help us and to help us move forward. So yeah, that's a good reminder, Kelly, that we can err on the other side of the spectrum too.
Bruce, you had one more handout that you shared with us about some unhelpful thinking styles, some traps people get caught in. I didn't know if in the last few minutes that we have, if you guys wanted to touch on some of those, especially ones that are common pitfalls in a time like this of great stress and great conflict between people, particularly online.
Yeah, I'd be glad. Okay, I'd be glad to do that. I'm also open if any of the participants have a final question, maybe something you were hoping we would talk about that we didn't get to, that you wanted to send in through the chat. I'd be glad to focus on that too. Yeah, so these are some examples of habits of thinking that you often develop over time based on life experiences or the people that we've interacted with in our lives. And the all or nothing thinking, sometimes called black or white thinking. Certainly at times, people having high expectations of themselves can be a strength, and similar to what Kelly said, may be part of the makeup of a successful business owner. But then where the stress builds up is that sometimes people are expecting themselves to be perfect and having unrealistically high expectations. And somebody with all or nothing thinking may view something as, if I make a mistake at all, if I'm not 100% successful in this endeavor, then I've failed. And it's hard for them to see not just a middle ground, but how the picture of somebody doing an excellent job at something, it almost always involves some imperfection and some mistakes or things they wish they'd done differently. So it's not a way to, pretend there wasn't a mistake, but to be able to have some control over how much the self-critical thoughts build up, to be able to include, I can be doing an excellent job and have some imperfections along the way, both as far as how you view your employees and yourself. The mental filter and disqualifying the positive are similar in that sometimes we develop a habit of, okay, I'm really good at noticing when someone says something that's a criticism, but if somebody says something that's a compliment, I disregard it. And that can become a habit. And again, that's different than thinking I do everything right. But if you notice that that's a habit, that can give you an opportunity to practice thinking about things a little differently, starting to build up some more habits that will help with easing self-critical thoughts. The jumping to conclusions can come up, as I know Rhonda was talking about, communicating with employees and communicating with peers. Sometimes somebody we're talking to seems a little short with us, or they're not smiling as much as usual. And so my habit of thinking might be, okay, what did I do wrong? Are they mad at me? Is there a conflict here? That's possible, but it's also possible that their behavior is a little different because something stressful happened outside of work in their lives, or they're not feeling as well. So being able to explore ways to, okay, I'm going to look for some more information to help me see if there's a conflict here, or maybe the way they're feeling is not related to me at all. So I'm going to hold off on judging that, and maybe I'll continue talking to them, maybe I'll ask them directly. And so those are some examples of ways to start to develop new habits. I want to be mindful of our time. There's a few more on the next page, and these will be the link where people can review them after the program.
Yeah, I think some of those too we've spoken to in other ways throughout this presentation.
Yeah.
I do have one more question from you from Q&A. Some employers wondering about, what are some of the best practices for communicating with our employees that are laid off? They had to maybe lay off their employees quickly. They've been on unemployment. I've heard personally a lot of different stories from employers doing a great job with this, and some people just completely disappearing, and workers have no idea what's going on, when they might be coming back, if they're coming back, what's happening with the business. So just some tips for those who are employers, how to communicate well and keep communication open with their employees, even when they're not really certain what to tell them.
One of the things I think of, and that is a challenging situation, is checking in to give updates, even if there's not new information. Sometimes if some time has gone by and the furloughed employee hasn't heard, they may be starting to wonder, okay, does this mean that I'm definitely out, that I've lost my job? And if that's if it's not the case, that their position is definitely going to be eliminated, checking in with them to see, yeah, I just want to give an update. I still don't know for sure about when we can bring you back. We're still hopeful that we can. I'll keep you updated when I know something. Sometimes that can help with the trust that, okay, they're giving me an update, even though they're acknowledging they don't have something new to tell me. And that's one approach that can help, I think, with the relationship, and also letting the person know where they stand. If they may be committed to waiting because they really want to work with you, and they're going to stick around till you tell them there's no chance. But if somebody is in a position, not that there's lots of jobs out there, but in a position to make a decision to start looking, then you're at least letting them know where things stand.
Thanks, Bruce.
You
Rhonda,
have
do
some
you have
other
any,
ideas, but those are some.
yeah, do you have any last thoughts on that, Rhonda?
Yes, I would just say that what Bruce said about, you know, keeping people informed and communicating, even if it's not new information, lets people know that I haven't forgotten about you. You're still on my radar. And even if you have to let people go, to be able to make some space to hear them, to hear their concerns. And I think sometimes when we have to make hard decisions, recognizing that, like saying that, like humanizing it. I think sometimes we don't want to show our personal side in the business setting, but I think it's really needed that people need to feel cared for. And even if we are giving them bad news, you can do that in a way that is compassionate and respectful. And that's really what that part about, you know, learning to manage yourself is so important, because if we're feeling guilty or we're feeling bad or we're feeling defensive, we're not going to come off in a way that the other person feels heard or respected.
Absolutely. And, you know, as a reminder, if you are an employer who's having to face those really difficult things and you're dealing with guilt and struggling with that, that would certainly be an appropriate time for you to seek, you know, care for yourself and counseling for yourself as you deal with that. That's a big burden to have other people's economic well-being on the line with your business through something that's so out of your control. Bruce Lynch and Rhonda Myers, thank you. You have been a wealth of information. We are so appreciative of your time today and all the services that you provide to our community. You are both local, and so anyone who's looking for more information can reach out to these lovely experts. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your hosting this. Thank you.
Our pleasure. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt for an intro to next week, and we'll see you then.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. So our next topic next week on June 24th at noon o'clock will be sustainability, how to position for post-COVID-19 success. Mary Heltzel, Senior VP of Stifel Investment Services, and Catherine Bonser, SCORE Volunteer and Chapter Education Chair, will be our panelists. You'll want to tune in because Mary and Catherine have some great ideas, very creative, out-of-the-box examples of things they've been experiencing, seeing in our community, and ways in which people have been able to really adjust and adapt to the current situation and really come out in many respects even better than and stronger than before. So we hope you can join us next week here on Etown Links, and thanks so much for joining us today.